Welcome to Unspoken Lives, the podcast that uncovers the powerful, untold stories of everyday people. The real stories you don't always hear, but ones that deserve to be told. I'm your host, Kelsey Billingsley. In each episode, we'll explore journeys of growth, resilience, and transformation. Conversations with guests who have faced challenges, embraced change, and discovered new purpose along the way. Through their stories, you'll find inspiration, hope, and a reminder that every life has a story worth telling. Let's dive into this next Unspoken Life. Today's episode is a heavy one. It's the kind of story no parent ever imagines living through. Jacqueline was referred to me by a friend, and she reached out because she wanted to share her experience and advocate for mental health awareness. What stood out to me was her heart to help other families, to bring light to something she felt unprepared for. In 2017, she lost her 20-year-old son, Erick, to suicide. In the years that followed, she started the Erick A. Garcia You Are Enough Foundation in his honor, creating space for support, resources, and honest conversations around mental health and suicide loss. Jacqueline, thank you so much for being here. I know this is a tough thing to talk about, but I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. Before we go back to 2017, I'd love to just get to know you, a little bit about you. Can you share who you are?
Yes, thank you so much for giving me the space and especially for giving me a chance to talk about this very sensitive topic that a lot of people don't want to hear about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I'm also a grieving mother. As you mentioned, I lost my son Erick by suicide in 2017. And now I'm a mental health advocate. I have a passion for this. I love helping people and also sharing my
Mm-hmm.
story because if I share my story, maybe I can get that parent to start a conversation, or maybe I can
Yeah.
make a person feel seen and for them to reach out and not feel alone.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
great. Thank you. If you'd like, I'd love to hear about Erick. As his mom, how would you describe him?
Thank you for this wonderful question.
Of course.
Oh, my son, he was like the son in the house. He was very happy all the time, a jokester. He was making fun of, not fun, making jokes and making everybody
Mm-hmm.
laugh. Very high achiever, good grades, friendly, and he loved cars. Ever since he was little, he will be playing on a rug with the little cars, and he'll be
Uh-huh.
doing run, run, run. And so he loved it so much that in 2017 he graduated to be a mechanic.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, he went to Sacramento, he went to UTI. He just was the greatest gift a parent can ask for, seriously, not
Yeah.
just because he passed away, but he changed me when he came to my life,
Mm.
and he changed me when he left this world.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I've seen, I know on your foundation website, you have photos of him, and I think you mentioned in one of those that he was always just smiling, and he just always has that bright, beautiful smile. I've seen it in those photos.
Yes,
But
yes.
like we've talked about, this is a sensitive topic, but if you could take me back to that season and basically, how we got to where we are now, can you walk me through either before 2017 or wherever you want to start?
Sure, sure. We started 2017. 2017, I was a single mother. I have my two kids. I have a daughter, Giselle. They're like 15 months apart. So they're very, very close.
Mm-hmm.
They're very loving with each other. I was just working, simple life, just going to work, coming back. They were going to school. Nothing was really different, or, I didn't see anything, but also I didn't understand mental health. I
Mm-hmm.
never started a conversation. When your circle, your family, it hasn't been impacted by it, you
Right.
kind of like, it's not that you're ignore about it, but you don't think you need to know about the subject because you see the outside. And, my
Mm-hmm.
son was studying, my daughter was studying, we were living our lives. I was very naive, very, very
Mm-hmm.
naive. I didn't really pay attention about those things. And I grew up in an environment that nobody was talking about it. So
Yeah.
that wasn't taught to me. So I didn't, teach it to my kids.
Yeah.
And everything was going perfect. I was working. My daughter started driving. She had her driver's license. Eric went with her to take the test and she passed. Eric was starting going to the internship. He finished it, the mechanical certification, and he had many, many plans. He came to visit us because he was in Sacramento. He came to visit us Memorial Day of that 2017. So the end of May, we spent time
Okay.
together. We asked him for plans. He had plans. Then he left. And then on June 7th, 2017, it was very hot. I remember the day I was working all day long. I had a busy, busy day. And I text him and I call him every day. So there was not one day that we didn't communicate. And we text a day, and I told him, okay, mijo, there's money in the account, I love you, have a good day. And
Mm-hmm.
then I got busy with work. And that day around 4:30 p.m., I was at work and then I received a phone call. And I look at the phone because I was working with a client. So I look at the phone and I put it down. I'm like, oh, I have to call her after this.
Right.
So I finished my work. I'm a notary public. So I was doing
Okay.
notarization. And then I had to go to Acton, which is like 20 minutes out of Palmdale area. But something told me, call her back. I wasn't going
Mm-hmm.
to call her back until after the other appointment. So while I was getting the paperwork, I'm like, okay, let me see. And I got the phone and I called and she answered and she sounded very broken, very, worried.
Right.
And I was worried for her. So I'm like, are you okay? Is your son okay? Because, she never called, those relationships you talk
Yeah.
not too much.
Yeah.
And then she asked me, no, I'm not okay, but are you alone or are you with people?
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, I'm at work, I'm with people. She said, I'm sorry, I have to give you some bad news.
Yeah.
And I just told her, is your son okay? I asked her again, and she said, no, he is okay, but Eric is not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, I'm sorry to tell you that Eric is dead.
Oh my gosh.
And at the moment, kind of like my knees went numb. I almost collapsed, but somebody grabbed me and they sat me on a chair and I started screaming, She's like, no, 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 it's not true. And that's the moment everything changed. And
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry.
somebody took me to the place. She told me where he was. He was in a place where he used to go with his friends to have fun, like a empty space in the woods. And that's where he decided to take his life.
Mm. I can't even imagine getting that phone call. And I'm sure I would never forget it. Like the way you're explaining it, just forever in your memory. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Can I ask, did your daughter know yet?
Oh, that was another part that,
Okay.
so that was another thing that I had to do. So, of course, like I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. I was
No.
just out of my head. Like I felt that my spirit left my body,
Mm-hmm.
those kind of situations. And so people I was there with them, they were handling my phone and telling me, you need to do this, you need to call. And somebody told
And
me,
this is while
call
you're
your
at
daughter.
work?
Yes, when I was at
Okay.
work. And my daughter on that day, she was at Disneyland. I remember telling people, how can I break her heart
Mm-hmm.
on the happiest place of the world? You know,
Mm, yeah.
how can I do that? And I told them, I can't. I can't.
Yeah.
But I had to do it. So I had to call her and tell her. That was another moment breaking her heart, at that moment. So it was very difficult.
Did your daughter live with you? So were
Yes.
you close? Okay. So then you were
Yes.
able to see her that
Yes. Yeah.
after that, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then, if you're okay with it, can you walk me through what happens next?
So then the other thing I had to do, of course, tell my family, but I
Okay.
didn't call anyone. I texted. I just
Mm,
didn't know how to call every single person. So I just
no.
texted everybody. Then my boyfriend, I was living with my boyfriend, not husband, but boyfriend. He was in LA. So he drove all the way to Palmdale an hour. And I told him, don't drive because if I was feeling the way I was feeling, I can only
Right.
imagine. I don't know how
Can't
he did
function.
it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very out of the reality. They just something like you said, you can never imagine you're actually
No.
gonna experience something like that. And you just feel so numb, so lost, and so I don't know. It's just different. Everything was
Yeah.
different. Hmm.
Obviously, all of it's extremely hard, but for people that haven't gone through something like that, what do you think the hardest part of grieving was for you?
Oh my goodness. All the what ifs, the whys,
Mm,
you think you have time, you think you
right.
have your life, and we take a lot of things for granted that before I wasn't in the present like I am now. And
Mhm.
that's one thing that I learned, that when you lose someone, what grief gives you is a better understanding of your life, more
Okay.
compassionate also, because sometimes, we're humans. We don't connect the dots. We just go day by day, and we're kind of like
Mhm.
an autopilot.
Yep.
We don't really take a look of how beautiful life is and how beautiful our loved ones are
Mm,
and how everything can change in a minute.
yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a good perspective. All right, so going back to Eric, you said you had all of these questions. I know I would be the exact same way. I I want to make sure it's okay to ask you these
Yeah.
questions. So if I ever ask you anything that you just don't want to answer, just tell me. But was after that day, was there any indication as to how he was feeling or why he made this choice?
Thank you for asking that. He actually left a note,
Okay.
but the note, I have read it 1,000 times or more. And
Mhm.
even though you read it, he doesn't give me the why he did it, but he does mention a lot of things that happened. My divorce, when we divorced, he was 8, my daughter was 7, so they were
Mhm.
very small.
Right.
And he mentions that how it was hard for him to be there for the sister, to be the older brother. Um, he mentions relationships with girlfriends. So just things like that, experiences
Right.
that we all go through in life, but he doesn't give me the why he did it. He just said,
Mhm.
I remember this so clearly on the note that he said, depression, you won, and
Mm.
he said that he was fighting it for a long time and he wanted to stay with us, but he just couldn't fight anymore.
Mm. Gosh, I'm sorry. That's a hard thing to read.
Yes,
I'm
yeah,
sure.
it's just to remember that. And at the note, he mentions us. He says advice for Giselle. He tells me how much he knows I'm gonna miss him because he said I am your mama's boy.
Mm.
That's what I always call him. My
Yeah.
boy, my boy. So at the moment, even though he was writing the note, he was still thinking of us. But like he said, depression won.
Yeah. I don't want to make you relive this too much. I want to talk about the foundation and how this led to that, but is there anything else you'd like to talk about regarding this specific part of the story before we get to that?
Oh, sure. I really don't mind. I'm okay with it. It still hurts, but I know it's necessary and it has to be
Mhm.
said. But the other thing I just want to know is also seeing Eric's friends,
Okay.
they're at the funeral and they're so young, and seeing them with that pain and that sorrow and that grief, it
Yeah.
broke my heart too. That's another thing that we don't see, the
Mhm.
survivors of suicide loss, that
Right.
is we forget about them. Think we talk about the person, but we stop supporting those behind. And that's
Mhm.
also something that I experienced it. I with the
Right.
grief, people change. They don't know how to talk to you, but just to bring more support to those left behind. We have to do
Right.
better.
I had a conversation with a friend the other day who had lost a child, and she shared with me that people also don't know how to speak to her, and that even though it's hard to talk, she lost her son. Even though it's hard to talk about him, she said she loves to talk about him, and she was encouraging people to ask questions and don't shy away from that. Would you agree with that?
Yes,
Okay.
100%. People say, "Oh, I don't want to make you cry, or I don't want to make you sad," but the sorrow is there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's here and here every minute.
Yeah.
But when people ask, like you asked me about him, that's what I said. Oh my God, thank you for asking the question. Is because you know what? They existed. They live
Right.
in this world,
Yeah. And
but
they had
it's
an impact.
yes, it's normal, in society, everybody's afraid of death and grief. It's normal, but I think we need to just see the person, your friend, for who she is still, and
Mhm.
still your friend. She's still that person. It's just now she's just carrying this extra grief with her. You know,
Yeah, that makes sense. So, how did life look like? You had the funeral, and then how do you continue life after this with holding this grief?
it was hard. It was so hard to do it. I don't know if you know the stages of grief, but I got into the angry one.
Okay.
Day one, I was angry at the world.
Mhm.
I was angry at God, which I regret, but I stopped praying. His
Mhm.
service, I told everybody, I'm not going to do a religious service. Nobody talks to me about God. I was in a fight with him. Um,
Mhm.
it turned me into a bitter woman, I would say. I was very angry. Like I said, I stopped smiling. I would just
Mhm.
look at people and, when you see people laughing outside and smiling, I'd be like,
Right.
why are they happy? Why are they
Mhm.
smiling? Why did it happen to us? So it was very dark. It was a very dark
Mhm.
moment. I think I took up to 7 months
Wow.
that I was dealing with all of that. And in between, I was, drinking wine every night,
Mhm.
just working, coming home and going to bed. Like
Yeah.
my relationship with my boyfriend back then, it was falling apart because he doesn't
Yep.
have kids. So he didn't understand why I was grieving still.
Mhm.
We had to go to therapy. Thank God our relationship was safe. But it didn't change until after 7 months when I started to pray again.
Okay.
That was what it changed, talking to God again.
Do you remember that first time you prayed?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
I was in the living room, with the TV on, just in my thoughts. But every day I have this big, heavy weight on my shoulder. It's just the
Mhm.
energy, I think, and all of that. And I remember I told my boyfriend back then, I said, I'm going to pray right now. And he said, okay. And I closed my eyes. And I started crying. And the first thing I said to him was, I'm so sorry, God, for
Mm.
giving my back to you, for blaming you for this, because I thought he forgot me.
Mhm.
And I asked him to please help me turn all my bitterness, all my anger, all this pain to something beautiful, something that will help others, something that will give me a purpose. And he responded right away. I mean, I remember I felt lighter. And then I started understanding, I know what I can do. Unfortunately, people say it happens for a reason and you don't understand, but I knew at the moment, I knew what I was going to do. And
Mhm.
that's when everything changed because he was right there. God was right there. He
Right.
never left me. I was just blocking him. But then the minute I prayed, he said, I'm here.
Mm. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you feel when you say you knew what you were gonna do, is that the foundation?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
did it just come to you after the
Yes.
prayer?
Yes. So
Wow.
what happened is we had a GoFundMe because we had to create a GoFundMe for his service, but at the last minute, a family member paid for the service. So I left the money there. I didn't
Okay.
touch it. And then I thought, okay, I can start with a scholarship. So I contacted the principal of his high school and we started a You Are Enough scholarships. So the first year we awarded like 3,500 to
Mm.
7 different kids. And all they
Wow.
had to do was an essay about mental health, like
Mhm.
tell us about mental health or how has impacted your life. And we got those essays and once I started with that and posted it on Facebook, and I shared with everybody, and everybody was, wow, that's amazing. So then I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I can help other kids since I cannot help Eric financially. We can help
Mhm.
other kids financially that needs that. Then that's how we started. And then I got another idea. I'm like, oh, I can do a nonprofit and help people that struggle with mental health. So I
Mhm.
started with a Facebook page,
Okay.
and I called it his name on the website. The nonprofit is Eric A. Garcia Urana Foundation because I wanted to also highlight men die by suicide
Mm.
more than women.
Okay.
And, society kind of put a lot of pressure on men and they
Mhm.
sometimes they don't feel good about expressing their feelings. little by little, then the next step, I was Googling everything. We didn't have ChatGPT back then.
Yeah.
So I had to Google everything, like had to start a nonprofit, had to do a website. So I did everything alone.
Wow.
And little by little, like I said, God was guiding me. Angels were coming, helpers, the
Wow,
helpers that
that's
God sent.
beautiful.
And it became more than I expected. It's
Mhm.
been such a blessing for others, for me. If I
Mhm.
didn't have this nonprofit, I mean, I share with you how I was. I don't know who I'd be right now. I don't know if I'd be
Mhm.
with my husband. I really don't know. I vision myself really alone in the streets, losing addiction because I didn't want to be here
Mm.
anymore.
Yeah.
So this nonprofit not only helps other people, but it saved me. It saved me as a
Yeah.
person, you know.
That's amazing. So I know it started out as scholarships, but can you share about the resources you offer through the foundation?
Yes, yes. So what I did, I started going to community, do a lot of community outreach. So I would bring a
Okay.
table and I would go to different agencies and get whatever they had. And when there was an event in the community, I would put all those resources because a lot of people don't know where the resources are. And sometimes they don't even know that they might need it someday.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing we did. We do outreach, and we also now partner up with BetterHelp. They do free therapy for us, so they give us some vouchers so we can give to the community. Because another problem that we have with mental health is that if you call your therapist and you want an appointment, they tell you 2 or 3 months. There's a waiting period. Unfortunately, a lot of people need the help right there and then. So
Right.
I thought, okay, maybe if I do the BetterHelp and people can sign up and do on Zoom therapy or the phone, at least it's something while they wait to see their therapist.
Yeah.
So we do that. That's very important for us. We're gonna start free therapy in person. Right now, I'm working on getting therapists to work with us because the services that we provide, I want them to be free. I
Mm.
too much already for people to put mental health or my basic needs. I want them not to have that decision and also to
Yeah.
get the resources. So if there's any therapist that would like to work with us, we need a pro bono or something free for the community. That would be so great.
Yeah.
And we do a mental health walk in Palmdale, Lancaster. We didn't have a mental health walk like LA and other cities. So we started a mental health walk in Palmdale. This year will be our 5th year doing the
Wow.
bringing the community together for the You Are Enough
Yeah.
walk. Grief support, that's another thing that you mentioned. People
Mhm.
don't like to talk about it or don't know how to be there for a friend. So we do workshops. We educate on the warning signs. I became a QPR facilitator, which is called Question, Persuade, and Refer. It's a 1 hour workshop where we teach you how to learn the signs and what to do and what to say and what not to say.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do a lot of those things.
It's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier mental health wasn't really something your family talked about. I don't think most families talk about it. What's something you'd like other parents to understand, or I don't know, maybe coach them about how to talk to their kids about mental health?
I would say don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to talk about mental health. Don't be afraid to say suicide. People still don't want to say the word suicide.
Mhm.
Get to know the resources, learn the signs. After I learned the signs, because I started taking workshops and a lot of things, I look back when Eric was alive and the signs were there. The
Mm.
signs were there, but I just didn't know any better. And like I said, I was in autopilot,
Right.
making sure that we had food and working. And I didn't take the time to sit down and actually see him in the eye and have the conversation.
Yeah. Can you share about those signs?
Oh,
Sorry.
sure. No, 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 sure.
Okay.
Angry, Eric was very
Okay.
angry, but he was 20. So I confused his anger with, oh, he's a teenager, or, he's
Mhm.
young, the hormones and all of that.
Right.
But when they're really angry, there's always pain behind the anger. I was just like, oh, stop being angry. I never said, what's going on? Let's talk.
Mhm.
Tell me what happens. Even though if he would have not opened up, I don't know what the outcome would have been.
Yep.
But at least I would have been like, maybe if he would have seen me more concerned or taking the time to see him and tell me, please, what's going on. I don't know. Maybe he would have opened up or not. But That's one thing. I think a lot of parents confuse that with
Yeah,
anger,
definitely.
you know? So let's talk more about emotions than
Mm-hmm.
like behaviors, like what I did. I was looking at the
Got it.
behavior, but I didn't go more into the emotions. And, prevention is starting the conversation. Like I said, I didn't know the signs, and the signs were there. So I always tell people be more observant, look at the eyes, pay attention and on the feelings, talk about it, learn the signs.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Thank you for listening to part 1 of this conversation. Next week, we'll continue the story in part 2. Here's a preview of what's to come.
Blaming people, blaming society, blaming God. I was tired of the negativity that was absorbing my life, absorbing my relationship. I wasn't being a good mother to my daughter. In the grief, I lost myself so many moments because I was so into my grief that I forgot about her too in a way,
That's it for this episode of Unspoken Lives. If today's story moved you, inspired you, or made you reflect on your own journey, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next powerful conversation. I'm always on the lookout for new guests. If you know someone with a story that deserves to be shared, I'd love to hear from you. Check the show notes for contact details and make sure to follow along on social media at Unspoken Lives Podcast. Until next time, keep listening, keep sharing, and remember, every life has a story worth telling.